Good day there viewers, my name is Cliff and welcome to my channel called Vintage Time. I'm certainly glad that you can join us today in this special episode of how to cut gemstones. If you're new to my channel and this is the first time you've come to join us, then I think you'll be pleasantly surprised in the overall process of how a gem is faceted. And if you're one of my regular subscribers or viewers and you simply enjoy watching my channel, or you're trying to learn how to become a better faceter, then this video will certainly give you some insight to some different ideas and tips, and I'll be featuring some new products too along the way. So this large piece of quartz has internal issues with several veils and inclusions running through it, and I've marked the areas where I need to cut these out. So the blade on my diamond saw that I have at home is not quite large enough to cut through this large piece of rough, so I'm going to go down to my gem club this morning and cut this piece of rough into suitable pieces so I can remove the flaws, and I'm also going to make my preform there. So I'm back home again and I've cut the quartz up and removed a lot of inclusions, and these are the pieces that I'll keep, and I've also made a preform out of one of the pieces. So the preform has been made up at my gem club also, and you can see that this particular preform has a lot of depth in the pavilion. So I'm going to be faceting my own design once again, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about whirlwind designs once we start the cutting process. For the benefit of the new viewer, this is the first transfer of where I need to glue my preform onto a brass stopstick. It's held in place within the transfer jig. The type of glue I use is a 2-part epoxy glue, and I let it set overnight. So the first thing I'm going to do, and you don't need to do this process, you can start with cutting the pavilion facets, but I want to get a general idea of the size of the stone because I want to have it calibrated to a certain size. So I'm going to round out the gem. I've got the protractor angle set at 90 degrees, and you'll notice that on the side of my faceting machine I've got a couple of little rubber flaps, and that's to prevent the water spray. When the guard is open, you do get a bit of splashing and spraying. That's normal. Don't go buying some commercial splash guard, you're wasting your money. A couple of dollars if that will buy some rubber flaps. So I've rounded out the preform, and this is only a temporary measure. This gives me an idea of the size of the gem because I do need to facet the pavilion and then cut the girdle facets later on. As you could see with the opening credits of How to Cut Gemstones Special Edition Quartz, I'll be calling the name of this gem the Tornado's Eye. In one of my videos I faceted a gem called the Whirlpool, and I've been thinking very carefully since then that I would like to cut another similar gem, but totally unique and my design that didn't come from any schematic or any design books. There are several Whirlpool designs around, but unfortunately most of them tend to be suited for gems that have a high refractive index, where most people really only facet gems with lower refractive indexes like quartz. So I thought, well, this time I would come up with my own design and create a pavilion that has kite facets that swirl, and I'll be cutting that to 43 degrees at the coulette. The girdle facets will be a little bit unusual as each girdle facet will be dovetailed. What makes Whirlpool designs most effective are the specific angles on the crown, but more so is the diameter of the table. Trying to match the size of the table to the size of the last step of the pavilion facets is critical to any Whirlpool design. So taking any shortcuts by not creating enough steps on the pavilion, or trying to make the crown shallower because you don't want to put an extra step in or extra facets, or making the table larger will not make this design work. So as you can see by the previous scene and this scene, that the first step of the pavilion has been faceted in order from a 100 grit disc all the way down to a 3000. As you can see, I've cut the girdle outline and there are 16 facets that form the girdle. The pavilion has a lot of depth in it, and I'm going to need that because I need to cut 5 tiers. Also, the crown has a little bit of an inclusion or a veil running through it, but I will remove that later on when I get around to faceting the crown. So this is the next step. I usually do this, and you've seen this in my other videos. I like to polish my girdle at this stage, and I've gone back to the lightning lap to test it out even more, so I'll just see how I go. So after using the lightning lap, I haven't been particularly happy as it's leaving little scratches behind, so I'm going to revert back to using the tin lap with the 50,000 diamond compound. I need to downgrade this lightning lap to about 5 out of 10. So the girdle facets are now polished using the tin lap, and so next step will be I'll be faceting the second tier of the pavilion. So I'm ready to start faceting the second tier of the pavilion, and I'm not going to highlight any of the protractor angles or indexes because I do want to protect this design for myself and even tweak it more for other gems later on. It's really important to protect intellectual property, and I've even noticed on YouTube that there are other faceting channels that use the same music, same ideas, same camera angles, and what is the likelihood of that happening? So even with designs, it's important to be your own person when you design gems and be yourself. So now it's time to polish all these pavilion facets. I'm using a tin lap with a 50,000 diamond compound. In the following scenes you'll see that I've polished all the pavilion facets from the girdle all the way down to the coulette. So here's a little hint that I only just learnt myself, and this was passed on to me from a fellow gem cutter in my state faceting group, and he said he uses glass cleaner from Aldi to clean his tin laps. And I have to admit, I have to thank him because it really does a great job. Because normally I use WD-40, and WD-40 really does smell. It's not a great product to use. In order to facet the crown, I need to glue another brass stop stick to the gem, and this is placed within a transfer jig overnight. The original dop stick is removed by heat. In order to remove quite a bit of material from the crown, I've decided to use a 100 grit disc, but you do need to be careful as you get closer to the girdle outline, because as you can see, you start to get a bit of chipping. So you'll see that I'm creating 32 facets on the first step of the crown, and by doing this I'm forming like a dovetail on the girdle outline, so it's not a naturally straight girdle, and I think this is a really cool effect. In the following scene coming up, I've cleaned the facets even more, and you can see the slight dovetail effect on the girdle. So in the next scene I need to facet the next step on the crown, and as you can see it's quite a low angle I've set, and in order to cut these facets, it's not the traditional step cut where you align the facets. These facets will be off center with the original facet, and I'll be cutting down to a certain depth. I won't be splitting the original facet, and this is quite a complex little maneuver and will take quite a bit of accuracy. As a side note, every index on my index wheel has been used to facet this gem. Here's a little hint to help you when you're faceting at very low angles. Always facet the gem on the trailing edge of the disc. Never allow the sweep to go past the spindle, because when you're doing this at low angles you're likely to jam the gem into the disc, because the disc is actually rotating in reverse against the gem, forcing the faceting head to move up. In this scene you can see that I've cut the second tier of the crown, and this is a very tricky, complex little maneuver because each one of these facets have to be cut down to the right depth. In order to get those facets as even as possible, I'll have to polish them in a bit more. Now I need to facet the table, and I'm using my 45-degree adapter, and the size of the table has to be perfect for this whirlwind or whirlpool effect to happen. So now the table has been cut, and hopefully I've faceted it to the correct diameter. So the last step of this process is to polish the crown. using the same tin lap as before and using a 50,000 grit diamond compound. In the following scenes you'll see that I've polished all the crown facets in order from the base of the girdle all the way up to the table being polished last. So once again we're coming to the conclusion of another video of how to cut gemstones. I would like to personally thank all my subscribers and followers who take the time week after week to leave messages and watch my videos. And also for those new people who've just watched this video for the first time, I would like to extend a personal invitation that you join us probably on a regular basis of once or twice a fortnight, where you can watch another video how gems are being cut. And of course we have what we call the final reveal, and at the end of this video I'll be uploading some footage of what this gem looks like. And in my opinion it's probably been one of the best gems that I've cut for a long while. So until next time everybody, please take care, please like and subscribe, and it's bye for now. See you later.